Well, I see the guitar back there. We'll get into that. We will definitely get into that.
Okay.
So, I would love to begin our conversation with 4 years ago, we were all wrapping our heads around this global pandemic. How long is it going to last? How is it going to affect us? We're out of it, so to speak, in the post pandemic era. How did you survive it? And how did it change you?
Wow. I have to think that it gave me some options as far as at the time I was teaching. Teaching is my background, not professionally or credentialed, but I started in fitness and moved through. I say I'm on my fifth career right now. And the common thread was always teaching. And when I was in fitness and everything was shut down, it started to become apparent to me that I needed to do more of online coaching, share my story. I'm not a spring chicken. I fell into motorsports and have had over a decade as a career in motorsports, teaching, coaching, that type of thing. So, COVID for me really was a catalyst to, hey, hurry up. You need to get your proverbial stuff together and really focus on what you're passionate about because life's short and you see all this, madness going on around you. Um, I think that it was important to really focus on what was in my gut, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So let's get to the heart and soul what you do now in 2024. If I put you in front of a bunch of third graders, it's career day. One of the kids says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you
I
answer them?
I love that question. I teach people how to drive.
Okay.
Would you like me to elaborate on that?
Please, please do.
So I get behind the wheel or sit right side and share with people how to, from teens, I teach the teens how to proactively drive their car, defensively drive their car. I don't teach them how to get their driving license. I teach them how to handle a skid. So we teach skid recovery, panic braking, drop wheel. That's just one aspect. That's my philanthropic side.
Sure.
The other thing that I do is teach adults like you and me. It started with women, but how to performance drive. And that means how to race a road course, how to race autocross, how to do donuts, how to, of course, skid recovery, how to do all the really fun things. And I do that on different surfaces. I do that on pavement, I do that on dirt, and I do that on ice. And it's really funny to be hired by Bridgestone and they say, hey, you know what? Come teach with us for a season and you're going to wipe the floor with all of these guys. You're going to beat them all. And it was a California girl going to Steamboat and teaching people how to slide around on ice and snow. So that's what I do.
Excellent. What did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream to grow up and
An
become?
architect.
Okay. All right. So let's peel back the layers of this fifth incarnation here. Take me back to where you were born and raised and how the backbone of, being in a car and teaching and podcasting, how did all of this become you?
It's crazy. But so for me, I grew up at a little place called Balboa Island. And then we had a home in the valley, the San Fernando Valley. My
Yeah.
father worked for Screen Actors Guild. He was very instrumental in putting the Stuntmen's Association and the safety uh, board together, the safety council for stuntmen, because he had friends like Hal Needham and Bill Hickman. They're famous for Smoking the Bandit and Bullet and French Connection, that type of thing. So I was always exposed to cars and people who knew how to drive them. Was really excited about engaging with that. And I remember being on, you won't know this, but maybe some of our listeners will. There is an intersection at Roscoe and Topanga in San Fernando Valley. And I was probably 11 years old, and I saw my first C3 Corvette, which was probably a 69 or 70 big block Corvette. It was black, it had T-tops, it had flames, it had this guy that looked like he could have been the singer of ZZ Top, and and side pipes too to boot, and it was loud, and I was with my dad and I'm like, "Oh, I kind of like that." And so it kind of created, in California or Southern California, we've got a very rich car culture.
Yeah.
So I've always been drawn to that culture. And I think for me, getting my car when I was 15 after lying on my work permit to go to work when I was 14. I'm really tall. You probably don't have any clue about that, but I've
Right.
always been tall and always passed off for somebody who was a little bit older. Hopefully not now,
Right.
but
Yeah.
back then. And so I worked and I saved money and I got a 1972 El Camino. And that was ultimately just the start of cruising Van Nuys Boulevard, meeting hot guys, and met my husband when I was 17. And I went out with him because he had a 69 Camaro Z28. So that's cars. And it just kind of, I went through some some phases with family, dynamic, and I wasn't able to go to college for architecture. I was able to go to school for fitness because I'd moved out very young and wound up getting involved in fitness because, wow, that was a way to get paid to exercise. How freaking cool is that?
Yeah.
And got married young and started a family very young. And then my husband and I opened an automotive business. I guess that was in 1987, and we were detailing cars. I only had my AA. I was still teaching, but, unless you're going to own a gym, that's it's kind of a rough life because it's
Yeah.
all labor. And, so for us, the automotive business was a perfect fit. Then a friend of mine, when we weren't willing to open a facility, said, "Why don't you come to work for me?" And it was actually in real estate. So in 2000, I got my realtor's license and salesperson's license, and realized I could stick a bunch of irons in the fire, still stay involved in fitness, but even when I was gone, I could actually make money. I could, get things going. So that seemed to work out for me for about 20 years. And I still have my real estate license and still do that, but got back into a little bit more into fitness and less into selling homes. After 2008, things took a turn and it was a struggle. So it was great to have for part-time, but I was also raising a family as well. And then our automotive business, our chassis builder said, "Hey, why don't you come out and do this race with us?" We're like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." So I got to go out and slide a car around and I was hooked. And
Wow.
yeah, and the teaching within real estate, I became a mentor for the office that I worked for. So I coached other agents on how to study contract, negotiate, those types of things. So I was always had my hand in teaching. And I think the car thing, because I was so in love with the idea and it felt so freeing, I learned new ways to communicate. I learned really how to do well racing a car. And then it naturally morphed into women first coming and saying, "Hey, can you show me how to do that?" I'm like, "Sure, why not?"
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So, who's been a hero, an inspiration for you in your life?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, I had a friend who definitely inspired me. She passed away. She was a very good friend. Like you, things morphed for me within racing, and I became a motorsports lifestyle journalist. And I was friends with this gal. Her name is Jessie Combs. She holds the record for being the fastest woman on earth. She unfortunately passed away. She was in the North American Eagle. Something hit one of the wheels and she unfortunately lost her life. It's almost been 5 years. 2019 is when she passed away, Alvord Lakebed. And I think that she and I had known each other for about 15 years, and she was introduced to me actually through my youngest son when he was about 11 years old. He was helping her photographer, and that's how we connected. So it's really interesting how people, you don't necessarily see it coming,
Yeah.
these relationships that really impact you, right? And she was on overhauling, she was doing all girl garage. She was the epitome of cool. And she wanted to hang out with me and wanted to help promote my racing because she was really about improving the opportunities for women within the motorsports and automotive industry. And I'd have to say, even though she's passed, I work with the Jesse Combs Foundation, and it's a foundation that earns or shall I say, provides scholarships for young women who are interested in going to school for any type of motorsports or automotive industry training. So I'd have to say her as far as a hero goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you can meet anybody alive on the planet right now that you find fascinating, who would it be? Who would you love to meet and talk to?
Oh, gosh, these are sometimes the questions I ask people.
There you go.
And I don't know who,
Swapping notes.
yeah, I really have to think about alive or dead, what would I say and who would I speak to? Um, do I have to have one?
No, you
Can
can
I
have
have
multiple. I guess it would be more apropos to say who would be a dream podcast host or a guest, I should say.
Oh, I would actually have to I would have to interview, Hal Needham.
Yeah.
Because he was a friend of my father's and kind of coming full circle and knowing I mean, who doesn't love a little Smokey and the Bandit,
Yeah.
right? I
Right.
mean, I think that I've been fortunate we've had some really, really amazing guests on our podcast, so I've been very fortunate to ask them the same question, and, I'm always inspired by the answer.
Yeah.
I absolutely am, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I think he'd make it a great interview. I mean, he
Yeah.
was the first guy to jump a car
Yeah.
across a bridge. I mean, it was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really
Yeah.
crazy.
I keep thinking about I saw a documentary on Evel Knievel. My dad actually ran into him in a lobby in Lawrence, Kansas, and said that he wasn't really nice, but I think that was kind of his way. I think he just was always in go mode, and he just didn't
Yeah,
want to slow down. So, but I'd forgotten how many things he did and how big it was on Wide World of Sports and how many people tuned in and how bad he destroyed his body. It was just all of it was crazy.
it is crazy. And I think too, maybe because like you said, he's always in go mode and how many people he was so recognizable. I mean,
Mhm.
think about the time back then
Yeah.
and look at where we've come with social media and all of that and people looking for that same type of infamy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. For
And
sure.
then what do you do with it? Be
Yeah.
like, "Don't look at me, don't look at me, don't look
Yeah.
at me."
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I think he got to that point later on. So,
Yeah.
what is your motivation? What gets you out of bed every day? What gets you to do the work, to teach, to help people, to grow as a human being? What is that motivation for you?
Well, I think the first thing for me, first and foremost, is gratitude, and I really have to qualify this with I have to be, 100%, um, transparent because it's not always easy, but it's like this little reminder, once you see it, you can't unsee it. So there is a certain amount. I'm an early bird. I love getting up. I love getting out, getting the animals all situated. I mean, sometimes the cat really frustrates me, but that's because she's elderly. And what do you do with an elderly cat? You can't be mean.
Right.
But coffee is another
Uh-huh.
thing that
Yep.
keeps me motivated.
Yep.
Um, I think that finally landing somewhere that I can allow my creativity to kind of rule the day, I think that helps. And I think really at the beginning of all of this, I wasn't suspecting that my life would take a shift, a career shift the way it did. And when you land somewhere that you know with every fiber of your being you were finally meant to be, I think that really helps with the getting up in the morning.
Yeah.
I absolutely have always loved life, whether I'm going to dig ditches or whatever whatever unfolds during the day.
Yeah.
But I think that for me, motorsports really gave me an opportunity to um, learn how to communicate in different ways.
Yeah.
And I was at a yoga class. This was quite some time ago when I didn't think about a motorsports career. I just thought about, oh, we're going to go slide around some cars this weekend. Oh, it's going to be fun type of deal. And there were women my age who, I'm an empty nester. Um, this was at a time when the kids were nesting out and I wanted to stay relevant. And this woman at yoga thought that that's really cool what you do. And I'm like, well, you could do it too. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be cars, but you could do this. I had no clue what that would turn into or how it would turn into a career for me. Really, really, yeah. So I,
Yeah.
I kind of pinch myself a little bit about that.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
So of all of these things that you've done and accomplished in your life, what are you the proudest of?
My kids.
Yeah.
Has to be my kids. The relationship that I have with my children, I think and they're adults and I'm a grandmother and um I think that is probably the most important thing to me, which is, you know, it makes it hard to say, "Oh, I want to move to Tennessee and, I want to go here, I want to go there." I'm like, "Nope, can't leave the kids. That one's going to have a baby. We're going to be okay." That type of thing. So, um I and I don't know that I take pride in it in so much as I just love them with every fiber of my being.
Sure.
They're crazy. Do you have kids, Joe?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I have a few.
You know what I'm
So
talking about, right?
oh, yeah, I totally get it. Absolutely, yeah, and my son's on the spectrum, so it throws a whole different way of kind of, how you see life and just I mean, he's my hero. He has to try extra hard, I think, to do things that people just do on their own because it's the
Right.
natural human development, so, yeah, it's fascinating. All of it is.
How old is he?
19.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so
That's a hugely special relationship, though, because you learn so much more as an adult
oh, yeah.
about yourself
Uh-huh.
than you do. I think you learn about them, of course, but you learn more about what's here, right?
Oh man, the inner workings on this planet that I've learned is just crazy, unexpectedly crazy, but it's good. And I can't imagine going through this ride without having that chance to see it. I
Yeah.
almost feel a little bit like the show Stranger Things, where it's like the upside down world. Like I've been exposed to this place that's just, it's different. And I think there's a lot of people out there that live certain realities that we aren't aware of that open their door it just opens their mind up to different things, so it's
Yeah,
fascinating.
that's
um,
cool. Thanks for sharing that.
yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious,
Mhm.
if you were to have a dream tonight and you ran into the 18-year-old version of you, you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on the life you've lived, the wisdom you've gained. What advice would you give that young version, and would it listen?
I like the second part of your question. Would it listen? Did we know each other when I was 18? Um, the chances are probably no, the individual wouldn't listen because, 18 years old, I think I had it all figured out. Um, I think the most important thing is oh gosh, this is so I mean, first of all, trust yourself.
Yeah.
Trust that where you are exactly where you need to be at that moment. The universe does things for you as opposed to you, right? Um, don't be so angry. You don't have to be.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be the police officer anymore. You're done.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that would be I like I said, I had some weird stuff happen as a teenager. And while I have lots of great memories, there's this really dark cloud from 15
Yeah.
to about 19,
Yeah.
or actually I should say 17, 18.
Yeah.
Yeah. That really colored a lot of my life. And um forgiveness is huge.
Yeah.
Huge. Yeah.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah.
Sooner.
I remember there was a jazz musician I interviewed. He's very, very talented and kind of legendary. His name is David Friesen, and he was such a deep soul, and he went on kind of a vision quest, so to speak, theologically speaking, and wanted to kind of go through the different religions and how they were similar and what was the most important. And at the very end of this quest, which was years long, years and years long, he basically came to the conclusion that the most powerful thing that we can do as human beings is forgive. So of
Yeah.
all of the things that we're in control of versus the things we're not in control of, it's that level of forgiveness. And it's weird. It's funny you say that it was a 72 El Camino.
Yeah.
Yeah, my wife loves the El Camino model, and I was born in 72, so I'm going to mention this, and she's probably just going to be like, "Oh my God."
You're like, "Oh my god," because stuff doesn't happen
Right,
coincidentally.
right.
It
I know.
happens for like we were saying, the universe does things for you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and I
Well,
think that that's beautiful.
well, I
Yeah.
always try to explain to Miles, my son, that the one
I'm not
thing,
surprised your son's name is Miles.
right, yeah, for obvious reasons. But the one thing I try to explain to him of all the things that it can be mysterious about life, and thank God he doesn't absorb things the way that regular humans do because you just have the blinders and it's good. But I try to explain karma about things that you do will come back, and it's just that idea of things just aren't as random, I think, sometimes as we think they are, because the karmic principle is very deliberate and will come back,
Yeah.
it will come back full circle one way or another.
Well, and I think too, I think that if we really pay attention to that third eye and our pineal gland or
Yep.
pineal gland, however anybody says that, you know what? We can manifest amazing stuff. Amazing stuff.
Yeah, it's funny. They say you should never meet your heroes. And
Mm.
when I was a kid, my hero was the New York Mets pitcher Dwight Gooden. I loved Dwight Gooden. I was a baseball card collector. I loved baseball and I loved Doc. And he went through a lot of problems with drugs and things in his life, but I've always loved him. So a chance came up last September where he was coming to town. We have the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. And he was getting honored. And I got on the media call, the press list, and Bob Kendrick, who's just a very flamboyant, wonderful human being, was leading a group of all these Hall of Famers, and Dwight Gooden's there, and I'm just like, oh man, here it is, here it's happening. Here comes this guy that I've just absolutely seen as a hero my entire life. And there's all these people in the room, and he could have gone up to anybody, and he just walks up to me, and I just shake his hand, and I said, my name's Joe Dimino, and he was like, Doc Gooden. I was like, it's so good to meet you. And I couldn't be a fangirl. I had to hold back. But just the fact that after all of that time, there was a level of just being in that room with them that we gravitated to each other. And I ended up getting to interview him for a few minutes, and Miles was with me. I had just taken him on a thing called Challenge Air, and it's this program where they take special needs kids and fly them around the city. And they go down a red carpet, and all these cheerleaders are going crazy, and they
Oh,
get a flag. So I
wow.
didn't know if I was going to make it because there was construction everywhere. Anyways, the whole thing worked out. We were in the same room, and I still can't believe it happened. But anyway,
That's amazing.
so it goes back to what you say. I think there's a level of us of manifest destiny that can totally take hold and become part of your reality.
Yeah, our brain doesn't know any different.
Right.
I'm rich today. I'm happy today. I'm
Right.
grateful today.
That's it.
I've got things to share,
Yeah.
right? And that's
Absolutely.
really what we're here for, isn't
Yeah.
it? To
Uh-huh.
share some information. I put those 2 together.
Y-
Information, entertainment. Let's
Yeah.
call it infotainment.
Yeah. Infotainment. Yeah.
And so and 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 sharing authentically your heart,
Yeah.
I think that you tapped into it, sharing that moment where you got a chance to meet this hero of yours, and albeit with your son, no
Yeah.
less, right?
Yeah.
Looking at something like that, that's pretty spectacular.
Yeah, and I had to keep it on the down low because his anxiety can get up. So it was literally seconds before I said, I locked eyes with him and I said, I'm getting ready to meet my hero, and I need you to take pictures and video while I do this. And he only got a few shots, but they're magnanimous. It worked out really
Oh,
good. And then
that's so cool.
yeah, and then I left, and I was a little bit teared up, and I was like, I just met my hero, and he was just kind of like, what? And then I told him the whole story, and I said, what do you think? And he was like, I think he might be my hero now too. So it was pretty cool.
Oh,
So
that's
yeah,
amazing.
it's fun.
That's so cool.
So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Oh, boy, you asked some hard-hitting questions.
This is therapy time right now.
Yeah, so if I'm being 100% transparent, a lot of what I do is to nurture the child that had so many. You don't know this. I'm over 6 feet tall. I've always been the tallest. I've never had an easy time until adulthood of connecting with people and making friends. I, was just an oddball, I
Yeah.
guess.
Right.
And I think that when we're growing up and we have formative years, we're searching for something. We're searching for who we are. We're searching for what are we going to be. We're always in that constant state of projection. And I think a lot of that has to do with the way we're raised,
Yeah.
right? You're going to grow up and you're going to do this. What's the first? What do you want to do when you grow up? Hell, I don't know. I still don't know,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure this is it. It took me like 5 tries, but I think if I were going to attach a perception of myself, I would say that have a generous spirit, but more importantly, I don't quit. And until you find what you're looking for, because what you're looking for is out there looking for you. It's big magic, right? It's looking to see, hey, are you paying attention? And oftentimes these ideas, this whole magic will tap you on the shoulder. If you're paying attention, then it's going to work out. So I think that my perception of self is one who is an entrepreneur. I never really knew that until like within the last year and a half, right? I didn't
Yeah.
know that. I'm like, oh, okay. Um, I love to I love to talk to people. I love to find out their story. I love to hear about them. And if I have something to share that inspires their life, then right freaking on, then I'm doing something right. So I think that perception is I don't quit.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to reach out, listen to your podcast, find out more, we kind of scratched the surface here. Anything and everything in your world, where can they go?
Okay. For Instagram, you can find me at fastlane_Jane. You can find the podcast also on Instagram at High Octane Hustle Official, on YouTube, Spotify, etc. You can find the podcast at High Octane Hustle. Um, I think, and our website, sorry. The website is highoctanehustle.com.
Excellent. This has been wonderful, Jane. Thank you so much. Thank you for your story.
Thank
It's
you,
been
Joe.
such a great experience. I appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, I appreciate you. Thanks, bud.
Absolutely.